And we should be live again. So hi, I'm Michael, and this is Inside Security, episode number 2. I just want to start off with saying a huge thanks to the people being in chat in the live stream. I am amazed that you're here on a Friday night, just spending time with us. So last week's episode was more of on the defensive side, or the blue team, right? So this week we'll do a complete 180 and we'll talk about offensive stuff, or the red team if you like. And with me to talk about the offensive side is a good friend of mine, an old colleague, and we've worked together on previous pentest assignments. So Danut, welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's awesome. So we're going to talk about pentest or penetration testing and just have a chat around everything that goes into it. And we'll sort of, we'll just have a chat and we'll see where it lands, right?
That's a plan.
That's the plan. It's always hard to sort of know where to, what skill set to talk about, because I don't know really which followers we have or which viewers we have. So I mean, but let's start with some basic stuff. So there's often a confusion about what is a penetration test and what is a vulnerability scan. Some people think it's the same, some mix it up. Some people think the order pen test, but they really want a vulnerability scan. So what's your, when you get that question, how do you explain it to someone?
Well, I actually do get the question quite a lot. So, I mean, we have several customers who basically go like, oh, but, we would like a penetration test. Can you do it in 2 days? Like, what do you mean? It's like, yeah, because, the previous penetration test was in 2 days. That's not really penetration. So, I mean, of course, vulnerability scan is an automated process, right? I mean, you have software which will go through a list of different types of attacks, and we will try to inject malicious data into your web application, or in case of infrastructure, into different types of protocols. And then you get the result back, and then it will outline, okay, this is what I found. I mean, some of them could be false positives, some of them could be actual findings, but I mean, they usually tend to go through the low-level fruits and get them all in. Penetration test is a manual activity. So, I mean, of course, we start off with the scan ourselves as well, but then from there on, we start to follow up and see what can we do from there on. So if we start to get very basic attacks, then we train them up together, see if it's possible to break in through different types of methods, or see if it's possible to gather more data from the server or the web application, depending on it. Of course, at the same time, if you want to have a vulnerability scan, I mean, that's great because you get the low-hanging fruits and you manage to get all the super simple vulnerabilities, as well as everything that you can get from your web application or infrastructure. If you want a penetration test, then you go a step forward. So you basically go from the long lines of what can an attacker do. So there's a little bit of a difference between them.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And while a vulnerability scan might find a possible vulnerability, it won't really exploit it, and it won't go the extra step, and it won't see what's behind that stuff, right?
No, exactly. So I mean, it just tells you that something does exist. So if we're gonna take the case of a cross-site scripting, so this means that injecting arbitrary JavaScript into your forms. So a vulnerability scan was going to tell you that, oh, I was able to inject something very benign into your field, and I got this response back. Penetration test can tell you that, oh, I was able to inject this JavaScript into your field, but at the same time, I was able to chain it with another vulnerability. So for example, cross-site request forgery, in order to create a denial of service. So let's say that we have something along the lines of store cross-site scripting, where you inject arbitrary JavaScript, is persistent on the web page, and then every single time a user logs in, your JavaScript will issue the command to log the user out, so the user will never be able to log in. So a penetration test can tell you this, but a vulnerability scan cannot, because they will just tell you that, oh, cross-site scripting exists, cross-site forgery exists, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also, let's. I forgot to ask you to introduce yourself because I'm some new at this, so I'm sorry
No
to
worries.
everyone, and sorry, Danut. So, like,
No worries.
we should start with that, and then we'll come back to this. So, could you introduce yourself? What do you do? What do you work with? Where
Yeah,
do you
of course,
work?
of course. Yes, of course. So my name is Danut Niculae. I work for ADDQ3, which is a infosec division of ADDQ. I currently work as a penetration tester and IT security consultant. I'm also responsible for conducting penetration testing, conducting audits, as well as overall helping customers with their security or audits and things like that, basically.
Awesome,
So,
thank you.
yeah.
And we worked together back in 2016, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, indeed. I think it was 2016. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. It's been a long time. Like stuff happens so quickly. But yeah, so we used to work at Corsic, and then that's changed name a couple of times, and then we sort of left to other places. But that was a good time. That's how we sort of got to learn each other and went to some fun assignments.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Thanks.
But it was fun times. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. I just had to travel to Malmö all the time, which was like from Stockholm, so that was yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit more difficult for you indeed.
Yeah, every single assignment was, yeah, can you just fly down to Malmö or something like, yeah, okay, yeah, no worries.
Like, yeah, sure. Let me just pack my bag. I'll be there in 5 minutes.
Exactly, yeah. All right, so thanks. Sorry, now we get that one done, which I should have done beforehand, before starting to ask questions. But I'm just so nervous, just so interested into like hearing your views on stuff. So I mean that's the difference between a vulnerability scan and a pen test. And like I wouldn't say that one thing is better than the other. Like they have different uses.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and I think some people are like, so what's the best? Like a vulnerability scan or a pen test? Like, well, what's your situation? What do you want? That's how I like to think about it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it depends a lot on the customer needs because, I mean, in some cases, it's best to have the customer with a vulnerability scan, right? I mean, or better yet, to have them both, in parallel. So you can start out with a vulnerability scan. You start to enroll the customer within the vulnerability scan. You start to understand what type of vulnerabilities they have, and then afterwards, once you have all the low-hanging fruits resolved and in order, then you can start to conduct a penetration test, which, as I said, is basically more advanced and more, manual work. And I think this is also something which a lot of people tend to misinterpret, is that, they understand that the penetration test is all automatic, but it's actually a lot of manual work. So, I mean, we have to, analyze every single request, every single response. We have to be able to understand what exactly the technology is behind the web application or behind the infrastructure layer, and we have to be able to understand the exploits behind it. If there is an exploit or if there's a weakness behind it, then we have to understand it and how to exploit it, and also what it actually means in the long term, basically. But I think that both of them can basically coexist. So one does not exclude the other. You should be able to have vulnerability scan to pick up your low-hanging fruits, and from there on, you can proceed with a penetration test to go to the higher level vulnerabilities. So
awesome.
that's basically my view of it.
Yeah, no, I very much agree. And I mean, that sort of segues into scoping, right? And so scoping in terms of pen testing is either, well, maybe you can explain, like, what's scoping in pen testing?
Scoping is basically to define what system should be included, or basically what should be included within the penetration test, right? So, I mean, if you have a web application, then you have to determine this is the web application that should be included within the penetration test. If it's related to certain APIs, then those APIs should also be included because the information flows back and forth. So scoping is determining what should actually be tested, right? So that's the main idea about scoping. Scoping is also quite difficult because it's also left to the customer side. So the customer, usually when they contact the penetration testing firm, the meeting or the startup meeting should go on the long lines of, okay, so what do you want us to be tested? They come back with, oh, we have this web application. More often than not, what happens is that they don't fully understand what should be tested, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not their fault, of course, because it's very difficult to understand. We should include, for example, we have this web application which communicates with some Amazon APIs, which they built as well, but they see a priority as just a web application. The problem is that the weakness can be in the APIs, for example. Uh, so it's quite difficult to scope it out and understand exactly what should be tested.
Yeah, and I mean, as you said, that can be quite hard. And I think, like one of my points is that, I mean, a bad scoping meeting or a bad scoping can sort of ruin a pen test, or get like inconclusive results. Like say for example, which I've been experiencing is where a customer says, oh, this is the scoping meeting and we're talking about this pen test. So we have these 18 web apps and like this full network, and you have 3 days to do it. So I mean that's a bad scoping, because you're not gonna. It's too much stuff to do in like a too small like window of time. So it's not gonna result in anything. It might get you a check mark, like we've done a pen test. Might get you a check mark if that's what you want. But yeah, so scoping can be hard. I mean, that's I think both sides, like customer and the pentest firm, like should have someone in the meeting who knows about scoping. And often you can let me know if you don't agree with me, but oftentimes from the customer side, there's some project manager or some application owner who is like doing the scoping meeting, and they don't know anything about pentest. Maybe it's the first pentest they've ordered, and then how are you supposed to know anything about it, because it's the first time you do it, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so like in those cases,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead, Danut.
No, sorry, I was interrupting you.
No, sorry, I think we have a little delay, so go ahead, you talk.
No, it's okay. So I mean, from my own perspective, yes, I mean, from a project manager's perspective, of course, it's very difficult when it comes to the actual timeline of how the pentest should work. I mean, they're mostly used to automated tools, right? So I mean, it goes in the same segment as vulnerability scanning, because they see it as an automated process. Of course, you should take roughly around like 3 days, 2 days at max, because you launch your tools, you get the results, you write a very simple report, and then you deliver it to them. So, I mean, when it comes to the timeline, there's always a little bit of a misunderstanding, because, as I said before, penetration test is mostly a manual activity. And then, of course, you also have the problem, as I said, that you don't really understand what should actually be tested. So in the case where you have 18 systems and a full subnet and everything else, that's really great if you understand that that's what needs to be tested, because you see the flow of the information starting from point A, where the user inputs their information, all the way to where the information actually lands and goes back to the user. And if you think that system is the actual sensitive part, then that's perfectly fine. But then you also need to understand that, to be able to test all that information and all those systems and application subnets, then it requires a lot of time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of manual work. We need to be able to go through every single protocol. We need to go through every single web page and test out every single possible attack. So yeah, it can be quite time consuming, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And so maybe one other way to go, and it sort of ties together with a question from the chat. So from Ricky B. So will you talk about the differences between a pen test and a red teaming assignment? And that sort of ties in together with what we said. Like, so web app test might be just for that specific web app with no context at all. So what is the difference, would you say, between a red teaming assignment and a penetration test?
I mean, the penetration test is part of a red teaming assignment, but if you think about red teaming in general, I mean, this also can include, for example, spear phishing, social engineering. Basically, that's a little bit more broad category, because when it comes to the penetration testing itself, I mean, you focus on the actual system or web application or APIs or embedded system. When we talk about red teaming as an activity per whole, then the field gets broadened, because it includes penetration testing, phishing, social engineering, trying to basically do anything you can to get a hold of the information that you need. It's actually quite a fascinating field, because I mean, for example, I know that in UK there's a lot of effort being placed on red teaming. So companies hire consultants to try to, fish their employees or to get inside. And I would say that's a good idea if you have like a super secret, uh, place or super secret office that nobody should get into, basically. But if you're interested in just like, oh, my web application is online and, users buy or sell different type of merchandise, and I'm very afraid that somebody would hack it, then I mean, that's a penetration test.
Yeah.
So yeah, penetration testing fits in red teaming category, but red teaming is more broad.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like if we're talking about time-consuming stuff, a red team assignment would be like way more, like it's just more extensive and longer.
It's very extensive because I mean you need to do your homework. I mean if we're talking about spear phishing for example, so let us take an example that company A requires a red teaming assignment where they're afraid that somebody is gonna break into their company via email or whatever. But the point is that you can't just go like bombard the whole company with emails, right? I mean that's not really plausible. So in the red teaming assignment, what you need to do is do your homework, understand who your target is, pinpoint which people would be more susceptible, and then those people need to craft specific messages, to get in. So, I mean, this type of activities take a long time because you need to be able to, get in because you have one shot. If you send the wrong email and nobody, bites into it, then basically that's it. You blew your shot.
Yep.
And you have to go the other way and drive a van nearby and break in.
Yeah, that's another effort to do.
Exactly.
And also, like one of the big differences might be that a pen test is very structured. Like everyone in that department knows that okay, so between Monday and Friday, there's a pen test from this IP address to that IP address on this scope, not after 5 p.m. and everything. And the red team might be just a CISO, or CSO, they just ordered it, and like no one else knows about it, right?
Exactly.
So you really
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, you have the meeting with the CISO, and then you both decide that okay, so we're going to spend 1 month, and we can come at any time, like an email or just trying to break into the company by pretending you're an employee or whatever. But I mean, we have 1 month to be able to break in, and it can happen in the weekend, it can happen during the weekdays, after 5. It doesn't really matter as long as we actually try, because that's an actual emulation. If you would have like a high level adversary trying to break into your company. So, because if you think about like a real life scenarios, an attacker doesn't really care if it's weekend, if it's after 5, if it's whatever, right? I mean, they're gonna try anyway.
Yeah.
So that's a proper simulation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a good explanation of the differences, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you do any red teaming?
Unfortunately, not yet. I don't think that, or I haven't seen any big requests in Sweden. Perhaps it happens at higher levels, like if you're talking about military or if you're talking about government institutions, maybe that happens. But when it comes to actual companies, I mean, I haven't really seen it. It's a little bit of a I mean, it's difficult to say this, but I think that it would work in certain scenarios. Because I think that the societies of the Swedish society is built in such a way that people are more trusting to each other, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, me myself, I happen to have certain cases where I was just like, I forgot my key tag. I was going to a customer's place, and I was just like, following people around because I was just like, oh crap, I forgot my key tag at home, So I went to reception, like, hey, I forgot my key tag. Can you issue me another one? So, sure. Here you go.
Yeah.
So I mean, of course, if you know, and I said this before, like if you know that your company has a very highly sensitive, like either data center or office where nobody should be allowed, then that would be the optimal point to have a red teaming assignment. But in most cases, it would be a waste of money, if you ask me, because it's kind of like, okay, we will get there one way or another. So I mean, it's more in the long lines of what would happen once we break in. So let's try to concern about how do we detect the attacker within the network.
Yeah, I think like the main reason it's not really taken off yet is because most companies are not that on that maturity level yet of securing their systems and organizations in as a whole, I'd say. But I think it is on the rise, red teaming, and I think it's gonna be more and more. I think so. Keep your eyes out.
I think so as well. I think, yeah, exactly. I think because right now it's starting to become a little bit more, widespread. So perhaps in, maybe within a year or so, maybe it's going to start to become more and more dominant. So yeah,
I think so. So speaking of forgetting your key cards and sneaking into places, like, have you done anything else? Any other pen testing assignment that's you can share, being redacted and all?
Yeah, actually, it's speaking of the key card, just a very very short story. It was actually really really funny because when it happened with the key card, it was actually I was at the customer place and I was there for the whole week and I forgot my key card on a Wednesday basically. But before Monday and Tuesday, since I was waiting for coffee or something like that, I was starting to chat up the receptionist person who was there. So we were just talking about different things like, hey, I'm a consultant, I'm the receptionist, blah blah. So we kind of have like this small friendship happening, in between.
Yeah.
So and then the Wednesday when I forgot my key card home, they were just like, you don't need to worry, just go through this door, which basically goes into the whole office without anything. It's like, oh sweet, there we go. No, but I mean, when it comes to penetration testing stories, I actually have one which was really funny to me. So we had this assessment where there was this the Oracle product placed on one of our customer side, and we managed to find it was back around the time when it was like super prevalent, the whole Oracle vulnerabilities. Everyone was just yamming about them, and it happened that one of the machines was not really patched, and we managed to break through in it. And it was mostly a Linux environment, but we managed to escalate the privilege. The problem was that the escalation of the privilege happened to the root account, and once that happened, the password was changed. And at the time, I mean, when we did it, we of course we wanted to revert back the password, but since it was the end of the day, and we thought like, okay, so we're going to revert it back in the morning because the team already left from the customer side. So it's like, it's fine. We're going to be at the office at 7 a.m. and we can revert the password.
Yeah.
So when we somewhere around like midnight, I received an email going like, hey, can we get back into our infrastructure, please?
So you locked them out.
I was like, okay, fine. Exactly. It's like, okay, fine. Let me just readjust everything. But it was a bit of a problem because I mean, from the customer side, I don't know who exactly forgot, but they forgot to actually mention to the developers that there was a penetration test ongoing. So they kind of panicked because one of the developers was working late and he wanted to push a new new patch to the system, so he didn't have access. So then all of a sudden he panicked and he called the lead developer. The lead developer didn't know either. So then it just kind of became like this huge uproar. It's like, oh my god, what happened? Everyone was just like, oh my god, that system's not working. We're being hacked.
I mean, that's what you think, right? If you get locked out from a root account or something like
exactly,
that's
right?
Not good. That might be pretty bad.
So then the project manager calls me and just like, hey, Danut, can you please give them back access? Like, oh shit, yeah, sure, no worries. It's switch back in, give them access, no problem. She's like, oh, there was a penetration test. Yes, there was a penetration. Oh, thank God.
See,
we're being hacked.
Communication is key, right? Even on the
Exactly.
inside. Yeah.
So I say look very fondly on that because it was really funny afterwards when I presented the report. Because usually what we do is that we try to encourage the customer to present the report at the end of the day. And this is not a topic which we'll talk about later, but it's very good that so they can understand exactly what actually happened. So I went in there and I presented the report. And when I started presenting, I remember one of the developers sitting on the outside goes like, "It's you. You blocked my access.
You're the bad guy."
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The bearded villain is here. It's like,
that's you. You're
exactly.
The culprit. So there's another question from chat from Ricky B again.
Of course.
So apart from that, did you break other stuff during a pen test? Something that even caused further troubles or downtimes?
Actually, I was very lucky the fact that I didn't. The problem is that a penetration test it's of course, I mean, a penetration test is trying to break into a system, right? And this is why we always encourage the customer to do a penetration test on a pre-production environment, because we don't want to do it in production, because God forbid something could happen and you don't know, right? Uh, but I was very, very close once. So basically, I launched like an automated scanner on one of the web pages while I was busy with an upload function. And it actually happened that in parallel, their system went down because, I don't know, somebody made a mistake somewhere within the system. It was a patch update or something like that. But I didn't know. And I thought that I caused it. And I was so sweating at that time because I asked the customer to have it in a pre-production environment, and they said, like, we don't have one when we have production. So of course, like, when you have a production system, you have to take extra care so you don't, derange anything in there.
Yeah.
And I was sweating bullets. I was just like, oh my God, what happened? What have I done? So I was just on the phone call with everybody. And then one of the admins told me, it's like, oh, no, it's okay. Just one of the servers just went down. It's okay. I'll reboot it. Like, oh my God.
So that I'd say you're lucky and unlucky, because I always say that, I mean, you're going to cause one big fuck up in your career.
Like, oh, definitely.
And like, if you haven't done it yet, it's gonna come. So yours hasn't come yet, right? You have your big fuck up is yet to come.
I'm just sitting here going like, oh God, oh
yeah.
God, oh God.
So I've done like, I haven't done anything big really, and it wasn't during a pen test, but actually during a vulnerability scan.
Oh.
Which was quite interesting. So it was one of a customer who, so there's maybe one or two viewers who will recognize this on the customer side. It was actually like the assignment was just a vulnerability scan. I had a default settings Nessus, like nothing like high performing anything, just basic stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they placed me in the room with the IT guys at, and then I just fired up, and it was like a 1 day assignment, I think maybe 2 days, it's like really short.
Okay.
Fired it up, and then just scanning, and like you do, like once you click start, like you just sit and wait. It's so boring, like you don't do anything. So I sat there, I just checked my phone, checked my phone, drank some coffee, and like people were coming in and out of that office and like complaining about stuff, like people do to IT, right?
Yeah, of course.
But then it sort of felt like it was more than usual, like it felt like it on the stress level of the IT admins and everything. And people couldn't surf the web, no emails were coming in, like nothing worked on the office site. And then after like, I don't know, too long to be honest, maybe an hour or so, I actually asked them like, so what's going on? Because I'm a curious guy. And they said, oh, like no one can surf the web, it's just so slow, and, like emails aren't being sent, emails aren't coming in. And then I figured out, like, oh, so, like, when did it start? Oh, like, around this time. Looking at my scan, I'm like, that's right, and I started my scan. that's weird. So I'm like, so, like, let me check something. I just paused it. I waited, like, a minute. So I'm like, so does it work now? Yeah, it works now. So apparently, my default setting Nessus scan actually destroyed the company firewall, and that just locked everything up.
Oh God!
Took up all the sessions, didn't release them anything, and just no one could use it. So I had to throttle it. So that 1 or 2 the assignment was like 10 days or something, because it was just so slow. So yeah, that's without a doubt the most boring assignment I've ever done. So it didn't affect anything in production or customer side, but like office wise, people were sort of panicking. So that's my only sort of fail. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
But the problem is that, like in those minutes that everyone's panicking around you and you don't know what exactly is happening, it's like, I think that the longest minute in your lifetime, because you don't know why. Yep. Is it you? Is it something else?
Yeah. And I sort of felt that it was me, because I was like, I have to pause this and see what happens. Like, yep, that's it. So, I mean, it wasn't really my fault. Their firewall was crap, I think, and just they had to sort of do something with it. But yeah, I'm not a guy.
It's also very, very funny because, I mean, When you're talking about, for example, embedded systems, oh man, those are the worst to actually, have a vulnerability scan on, because they just like, no. I usually say no to those, because they will, one way or another, they will crash.
Yeah.
Just like, yeah, we're gonna touch that one bit. We're gonna poke it very lightly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason most vulnerability scanners has an option to don't scan printers.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, we're not gonna do that then.
Oh, speaking of printers, I have to tell you this story.
Yeah.
It was actually really fun. I had a customer who had a very flat network. So, I mean, in their minds, they had something along the lines of, oh, we have our own, corporate network, the client network, the other network, basically. And they placed me, because we had VPN access, and they placed me into the, client network that was supposed to be segmented. The problem is that, they thought it was segmented, but yeah, exactly. They thought it was segmented, but the reality was just like flat completely. Uh, so I was covering through the network, and like, I didn't want to, go through ping pong through server to server. So what I found out was like one of their printers who had more access to the computers within the network had the default password. And the problem was that it also had an SSH password with root account on default. So I connected to the printer, and I installed, like the responder software, which abuses the Microsoft LLMNR protocol. I installed that one on the printer, and I started it. And luckily, it was actually an out-of-date printer, so they were not actually using it. But the client machines were still sending requests to it. So first I started an nmap to just check the corporate network, and then I started to listen to the traffic. So I got some hashes, and I was able to crack them, thankfully. But it was actually really funny, because I received an email from them like 2 hours asking me, like, Danut, why is our printer trying to scan us? Like, no, it's not. It's not me.
Yeah, I am your printer.
Exactly. That's what printers do. I don't know.
So yeah, I mean, it's so many different areas of pen testing. It's just a crazy array of skills that you need. I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I think was the hardest part about pen testing. Like, you had to be so good at just so many things, just so a wide array of skills. So do you have anything, like, is there something that you're better at or like more, like web apps or network or like mainframe stuff, or just is there anything that you're into more than the other, or just everything in general?
I think I do really love web applications, to be fairly honest. Especially the heavyweight ones, is because there's a lot of components going into it, and there's a lot of functionality that needs to be implemented, and it's just super fun to actually start to understand how it works completely, and just trying to imagine how the web application communicates with the server side, and just gets all the data from there, outputs it into the user, because then you start to get the kind of idea like, this is actually how it works. And you're able to correlate your attacks according to what you think is happening on the backend side. When you actually succeed, because you think like, okay, so the backend side has the structure of folders like this, so I'm going to use the directory traversal to be able to find this file, and it actually works. It's amazing. Like, that's super fun to do. So I think that, it's like web applications are the things which I love the most. But at the same time, I mean, if you're looking at, infrastructure versus web applications versus APIs, or, mainframe or something like that, it's very difficult to choose between them. It's like, and it's like having, like kids, and you go like, oh, so which one's your favorite child? It's like, that one. I don't know.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's very difficult to go. Also, what I really love as well, not just web applications, but I really do love reverse engineering.
Nice.
So I mean, it's really fun to be able to reverse the software and find out, the weaknesses behind it, and gather the information, and trying to present it to the customers, like, oh, but this is what's missing, this is what's happening, and your software basically does this, and this is where the weakness is at. So I think that reverse engineering is one of my passions, I would say.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's one of my, like, on my to-do list is learn to reverse, actually. Like, I know I'm fairly good at a lot of things. Reversing is not one of them. I wish it would. I wish it was, and it will be one day. So yeah, so reporting is not your favorite part then.
Oh yeah, reporting, sure.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there exists one penetration tester in this world which can tell you that reporting is my favorite part.
Yeah. I mean,
And of course, I mean it's fun when you do reporting and you have like a lot of issues that are linked in between each other. That can be fun to explain. So you can explain the fact that you abused two issues, to find the third one, or present to them. I was able to get root access because your server was broadcasting this message, and I was able to interpret it and reverse your password or something like that. But that's the fun part of it. But to write every single, like the whole fluff part, it's like we did this according to this and this according to that. That's not very fun.
yeah, I agree, and it's one of those things that like I don't think any pen tester like says that reporting. Yeah, that's like I love that stuff, but then again, like it's probably the most important part of a pen test, I would say, because it doesn't
yes.
matter how good your pen test is if you can't explain it in a way that the client understands it. Like it's useless. Like you might as well have done nothing. Because
Definitely. And I've seen this mistake so many times because the problem is that a lot of people don't really understand the fact that on the customer side, uh, they don't really want all the technical details. So I mean, of course you want the technical details, but I mean you need to be able to explain to them in full about what actually happened. Because you can get root access, you get domain admin. It doesn't matter. But if you're not able to actually explain how you did it and how can they remediate it, that's the biggest problem. And I think that's a lot of mistaking in this area because a lot of people just go like, oh, I've done this and this and this and this and that's it. But you need to be able to explain to them how to actually, fix it, how to actually, because you're there to help them to improve on issues, not just to, rub it and say like, oh, I've done this, haha. It's like, no, they are there to help them to improve it and there to help them to fix it. So you need to be able to explain to them like, I've done this because of these issues and this is how you remediate it.
yeah,
And as well as, explain it on a high level, because if you explain it only on the, technical level, it doesn't really help. You need to be able to explain it on a high level and explain to them that, well, it's because of these your company can be in danger. It's easy to abuse these issues and it's easy to get a hold of, root access because, these things are there and this is the root cause, like, I don't know, bad coding practices or misconfigurations or even sometimes lack of patching. We're able to do this, so you need to improve on these elements. This is something that management can understand easily. Like, okay, so we need to allocate more time on patching, we need to allocate this and, make it better, basically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And since we work together, I sort of know how you report stuff. I think you even wrote the reporting tool that we used. So, I mean, you should know. But I mean, I suppose that some companies just say, oh, here is the problem. And here you go, here's your report. But I mean, when we did stuff together, and I suppose you still do it, in the report you have like, so this is what we found. This is the proof in form of screenshots or logs. This is how you reproduce it. So you can just test it for yourself. And this is how you fix it. So we have those three parts, right? So I mean, with just that report, they can reproduce, they can understand it, reproduce it, and fix it, right?
Exactly. So I mean, I've actually seen a penetration report as part of one of my customers, since they ordered with us a penetration test, and the thing is that they want to be very transparent, and they wanted to have like a more of a white box approach. And I mean, you have three types of penetration. There's black box, which is terrible because basically like nobody knows what's happening, and they just give you a link and it's like, okay, test this, and that's just time consuming and it's useless for everyone. Gray box, when you have some information, some access, and then you proceed forward. White box, basically like you have the source code, you have everything in place. But yeah, so the customer wanted to have like a more of a white box approach. So they gave me a penetration test result from the previous individual that performed it, and it was actually really weird because the person wrote it in very simple details without any actual proof of concept. And I could understand the frustration of their developers because I mean, you create a ticket and saying like, oh, we have, for example, cross-site scripting, but where?
Yeah.
I mean, if we have an application with like 100 forms, how do I know where exactly it's happening to remediate it? And how do I replicate it? Because I mean, cross-site scripting can be anywhere between like simple, alert one to, super complicated syntaxes and, evasion and bypasses. And if the developer doesn't really understand how to reproduce the issue, then I mean, how would they be able to fix it? You need to include information such as screenshot, how did you do it, where did you do it, and the actual, injection that you performed.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely. So I mean, it's a sort of people skill as well, because I mean, you have to explain it so they understand it. Otherwise, it's a failed pen test, I'd say. Sort of.
Exactly. I mean, sort of course. But I mean, if the customer doesn't really understand, what the issue is, and they cannot reproduce it, then how are they going to be able to fix it?
Yeah.
So this is why I always, when I write my report, I always have to think about from the customer perspective and see like, okay, so, how, if I was a developer, how would I reproduce the issue, and how would I be able to fix it?
Yeah.
At the management level, how do I interpret the results? Are we good? Are we bad? Are we, in between hands? So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Is it red or green?
Yeah, exactly. It's red or green.
So we got more questions coming in for you.
Sure.
So from Ricky B again. So do you mostly do pen tests for like popular or known applications or services? Or do you do for custom developed applications as well? And is either easier or harder than the other?
I think we've done pen tests for, I mean, popular applications, yes. I mean, if you're going to use like an open source application, then more often than not, it's already been, verified and tested. So, I mean, we try to focus on the actual customer implementation. Of course, we're going to test, the actual application itself, make sure that, everything is fine and dandy. But we tend to focus on what the customer has actually done, because that's what they're more interested in. Now, what happens is that sometimes the customer buys an application from a vendor. And when they buy an application from a vendor, they have their own security questionnaire, like how'd you do it, code review, have you done it, and so on and so forth. But they also want to have a look and see like, maybe we're not really satisfied with, their answers. So can you have a look into this application? So it can be anything between super popular, like, Oracle style application to like, minimal application that was just bought because they needed some form of like log tracking or something like that. So we have encountered both. I would say that the easiest part is to do it with an open source application, is because you already have the code. You can start to look through it. So for example, if I know that, the login page is there, and I know the code behind it, and I'm able to interpret what happens if I'm putting my username and my password in there, and I know how the system interacts, and I can actually, download the copy on my own computer and take a server out of it and interpret it and see how the debug log looks like, then it's much easier for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's the most easiest one, I would say.
Awesome. So I mean, obviously you like pen testing because you've done it for quite some time. But not everything is just fun and golden. So I mean, what's the worst part? And I have my own answer, but what's the worst part about doing penetration tests? I can go first.
The worst part about penetration testing, I think I will say the worst part is when you get the backlash from the customer. I mean, the problem with penetration testing is that it's literally, taking someone's baby, their product, and calling it ugly sometimes. Fortunate times, you say like, yay, you don't have any major vulnerabilities. But when it happens that you actually have a lot of issues, and then you go into a meeting with the people responsible, and you say like, okay, so we found all of these issues, and the application has problems, or the infrastructure has problems. And I mean, the biggest problem is when you get a backlash or like a defensive response and say like, oh, but this is not really an issue because, this is not, I don't know, this is within a secure network, so therefore there should be no issues because nobody can have access to it. It's like, but somebody might have access to it. This is the biggest problem. I mean, why? I can also say like, I lock my door at night when I go home, but sometimes it can happen that I go to the garbage room and I forgot to lock the door. Then somebody breaks in. I mean, and I say like, oh, like they shouldn't have broken in because it's a private apartment. Not really. I mean, I still need to lock the door. So for me personally, it's in the long lines of, you need to understand that I'm not criticizing you, or we're not trying to criticize you. We're trying to tell you that you need to improve certain aspects. But yeah,
Yeah,
so sometimes it can happen that you have a backlash from people, and that's not very fun to deal with.
that's true. Actually, I haven't really thought about that much. But yeah, that's a topic for another discussion. Is speaking of that, I always go with it like assume breach philosophy. Like assume that an attacker is on the inside.
Yeah.
Like if you're a high value target, like they are likely on the inside somehow. Like if you're attractive enough and someone has enough time and resources, like they'll get in. So assume breach and just go from there. Like don't assume no one's gonna touch it from the inside. But yeah, so my like the worst part I know about pen testing is when you get a customer ordering a pen test only for compliance reasons. Like they want this to be
That part. Yes.
yeah, they want the pen test to be as short as possible, as cheap as possible, but like long enough so that you can give them the check mark so they can say that we've done a pen test. And they don't care about the
Yes.
results. Like they don't care about what you do. They're not going to fix the issues that you find unless it's something like extremely bad. But like they're not going to fix it. They just want it to be like, so when they get a question from some audit, like, have you done a pen test? Yes, we have. Like, okay.
That's it. Check.
Yeah, and like no one really asked the follow-up questions like, oh, so what's the results? Like, no, it's horrible, but we've done it. So yeah, I hate those. I hate compliance
I
pen
know.
tests.
I know. It's I've actually been asked this at least 3 times in my career. During a startup meeting, I've been asked, like, for example, oh, and at the end of the pen test, do you give me a check mark?
Yeah.
What do you mean a check mark? It's like, yes, it's like secured by. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
No, it's not how this works.
Like on Facebook. No, but I think this is also a little bit of a problem on how people actually, when they buy services, when they buy products. I think it's a little bit of a problem about how people interpret the security of these services or the security of these products. Because as you also said, it's like you have a check mark and you ask them, it's like, okay, so we're gonna buy, for example, random cloud company has very cheap services, so corporation wants to get into it and deploy all data within their environment. So they go to them and they say like, okay, so our security team asks you, have you done the pen test? Yes, check.
Yeah.
There's no actual, it's like, but so okay, so the last pen test that you have performed, what are the results? What is the remediation? Do you have any ticketing system? What's your process for resolving a vulnerability? I think it's a little bit of a step up the game kind of idea.
And like
So you need to be able,
like
you need to be able to ask the questions. It's like, but what's your process when it comes to a penetration test?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I wish you could just tell them like, show me your last pen test, and have you remediated those things from that one?
Exactly.
That would tell me a lot.
Or if you haven't remediated them, at least show me that you have a plan for remediating them, or show me why are they an acceptable risk.
Yeah.
I mean, it can happen that you have an acceptable risk because the platform that we're using, it's not really modifiable. So I don't know, some headers we cannot implement it ourselves because that's how the platform is, for example. So I can understand that that's an acceptable risk because the attack vector is high level attack vector and it requires a lot of time and you don't get a lot of information out of it. So you can say it's an acceptable risk. But it would be nice to see some form of explanation, as in why, not just like oh, we have this, okay, check.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. So yeah, we got from chat from Ricky B again that we should give a certificate of participation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I like Ricky B.
Yeah, great minds think alike, man.
Exactly.
So I mean, now that that COVID has hit, like pre-COVID, did you go to any? Like, did you used to go to conferences, and have you spoken at any conferences?
I used to actually. I actually spoke at Full Cafe, which is here in Malmo. It's like this, technical talk. They have different types of speakers every single week on different topics, and I used to go there. We presented, me and a colleague of mine, once there. on the topic about penetration testing. I went to another conference, which was Software Testing Association, I think it was, and we presented, me and another colleague, we presented the topic about passwords in there. So we had a couple of conferences, as well as going to the customer office and present their different type of ideas. Once COVID hit, unfortunately, you don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
and, and it's difficult because I mean, you can say that, oh, but you can organize a session via Teams or Link or whatever, Zoom. But the problem is, it's not really the same because
Yeah.
the audience is not as engaged as if you are in person. And I think that a presentation is super fine as face to face and all that, but what happens after the presentation, that's the most important part, because people tend to ask you questions in private.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they feel a bit shy, or they don't want to ask questions in public because, well, what if my question is stupid, or I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But after they start to, you finish your presentation and you leave the podium, then they come to you in private and they ask you questions. And more often now, those questions are very important to them. And I think that's a really important part of, engaging with your audience, which you cannot do it, on an online meeting. Because once you say, thank you very much for participating, bye-bye, then it's over.
Yeah, I mean, not every chat has a Ricky B in it, so I mean, he can't be everywhere.
Exactly.
So you just live up the
There you
chat.
go.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
MVP. Um, so, like, have you ever been to DEF CON or Blackhat?
Oh, I've been to Blackhat. I've been to Blackhat in I think it was 2018 that I've been there. Oh man, it was an awesome experience. We wanted to go to DEF CON last year, but COVID.
Yeah.
But it was so awesome. Me and a colleague of mine, we went to Blackhat in UK, and it was such an amazing time. Like we met up with a lot of threat researchers and vulnerability researchers, and we were just like talking and talk about different vulnerabilities, talk about different attack vectors, and it was an awesome time. And
Nice.
also some of the presentations in there as well. I mean, one guy, he had this idea about how to exfiltrate data from a phone through a charger. That
Nice.
was just like exactly. That was just like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, you can watch talks and stuff afterwards, or you can watch it on YouTube or something, but it's just not the same as being there. And there's also like other stuff apart from just the talks. I mean, you can't really do, I suppose, you can't really do a lock picking session like on Zoom, because you need a fucking lock
Exactly.
to do stuff with. So
You can't really go by your own door. Go like, oh, let me just log
yeah,
in.
again. So that's a
4 times this month.
yeah, that's a big difference. So do you do
No, but
any?
I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
continue.
sorry. No, I was just saying, I think it's an amazing place. I was really lucky enough to meet a couple of the people from Google Project Zero, and it was a lot of fun talking with them. Like, we're all just sitting around and having a beer and just discussing, the research and their setup and how they come up with stuff, and just to be able to participate in there and talking with them and coming up with ideas. So yeah, I think it was a lot of fun and a really nice experience.
Yeah, I mean, spending time with skilled people is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So do you do any CTFs?
BTS. I've done some, not a lot of them.
No, I mean,
Unfortunately, no.
some people do it like all the time. Some people don't do it, and some people do it at conferences. Like myself, I'm not really that much into it. I wish I was, but again, this just time, man. It's not time to do everything, I suppose.
It's difficult to find the time.
Yeah.
For stuff. No, but I mean, it's fun to do capture the flag, of course. It's like there's a lot of machines out there or challenges out there which are meant to be, extremely smart when it comes to vulnerabilities and how to find the actual flag. Uh, and I think that it's a fun pastime activity, and I think that's really really fun to do it in general. But this may sound very very weird, but I mean, to new people, to people who want to get into pen testing, I would guide them more towards, for example, bug bounty rather than capture the flag, because when it comes to capture the flag, I mean, you know that there should be some ingenious solution to, overcome the protection or to get root access or something like that. Which normally during a penetration test, you don't really have this, right? Because I mean, you have like, misconfigurations or vulnerabilities or something like that that you hook into. So I think that when it comes to new people, it's much easier to get into, penetration testing or to get into this kind of line of work by doing bug bounty rather than CTFs.
Yeah.
This was just like a side note for my own part. But yeah, I mean, it is fun. I used to do, like, back in the day. I think I used to do. It's not Hack the Box. This was another one which also had like like a storyline behind it. I forgot the name right now, but it was something like level 1, level 2. But it was a lot of fun to do it. But since then, I don't think I've done any others.
Yeah, level 1, level 2, that's probably like the one that comes to mind. It's Over the Wire. They usually do that stuff.
Over the Wire, yes. Thank
Yeah.
you. That's the one.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome start, or like to a way in, basically, like because they have a bunch of different like challenges, and they call it like Nagios and Bandit and stuff. And some of them are basic, and then they escalate to more and more advanced. So yeah, that could really be. Yeah, that's a good thing to sort of chat about. Like, if there's someone who wants to get into pen testing, maybe they work as like a SOC analyst, or they work in IT support or help desk, something like, and they want to learn how to hack shit, right? Because that's what's cool.
Yeah.
So what's a good way in? Is it to do like Over the Wire and Hack the Box and stuff? Like, do you have any other ideas?
I mean, it's a good idea to start there to understand the concept behind it. So to understand your tools. I think usually when we train juniors, or when we give new people, like an introduction to penetration testing, what I usually tell them to start off with is WebGoat. I know it's a very old, kind of like a old product, but what's interesting about WebGoat is that it gives you the details about the vulnerability, as well as it tells you how to fix the issue. And sometimes maybe you don't understand the code, it's fine, but I mean, you have an idea about what's actually happening. So once you understand the vulnerabilities, then you can go for, like Over the Wire or Hack the Box to understand your tools, to understand the concept, the environment. And once you have this down, then you can start to switch to, bug bounty programs or something like that to get, the feel of a real live example.
Yeah.
Because I mean, they differ a lot. Because if you take like a damn vulnerable machine or Hackathon or WebGoat, it differs from a CTF, and the CTF differs from a real life environment. I think the steps would be somewhere in the long line. So if you start off from like damn vulnerable machine to a CTF, and then you do bug bounty or something like that. And once you have all of this down, then basically you have an understanding about how a penetration test is conducted.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And almost all of those are also free. So I mean, if you're
exactly
like, if when you work as a pen tester, like, usually your company would pay just the stuff you need, right? But if you
definitely, I mean,
yeah, but if you don't,
you have a lot of tools.
Yeah, exactly. But while learning and trying to like get into it, it's maybe you don't have the resources to pay for burp license and for this and that. I mean, there's some really good stuff like Pentester Labs and Pentester Academy, right? Those are awesome. But
Sports Rigor Academy as well. I mean, it's really good resources.
Yeah,
and
they're
quite free.
Yeah, I think some of them will cost money, but like Over the Wire, Hack the Box, CTFs, and bug bounties, like free to do. Bug bounty, you can even make money. So I mean, why not?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and it's also interesting as well, because I mean, since you mentioned burp, what I find very fascinating is that you do have a burp free edition. Of course, it's very limited. I mean, it's not like the pro edition. But when it comes to the free edition, you can still use it for penetration testing. Because you still have the manual man in the middle proxy, and you can still intercept the response and the request, and you can actually understand what's happening. So, and also within the field as well. I mean, if you take out the paid versions like Nessus or Nexpose or something like the vulnerability scanners, which cost a lot of money, just focus on the open source. You have so many tools at your disposal.
And
exactly. I think that's the fascinating part about this field, is that people do want to, contribute to it, and they want to, help people to achieve different goals. And if you just go through GitHub and just like, oh, I want to, see how Amazon, just scour an Amazon S3 bucket, see if it's, available or not. Then you can just have to just go like, oh, Amazon S3 bucket, GitHub. And you're going to find somewhere a vulnerability scanner for it.
Yep.
And I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so do you use Burp or SAP? SAP being OWASP's own, yeah, so I figured.
Yeah.
Of course, I mean...
Unfortunately, Zap is a little bit outdated.
Yeah.
But no, Burp is, I think it's the leading tool in the industry when it comes to man-in-the-middle proxy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in general, tool for web applications.
Yeah, I think it's a go-to for literally everyone.
Exactly. It has a very nice interface as well.
It does. Rookie B, man, another question. So how much time does a pen tester spend on education? I mean, you must stay up to date with new techniques and vulnerabilities, right?
Definitely. To give you a very short answer, a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to keep up. I would say that you at least spend several hours per week, 10 hours per week to just like, I mean, of course, you don't sit there with manuals going through like, all the documentation possible, unless you're within an assignment and you really need to understand what's happening. But more or less, you spend time to catch up with, the latest technologies, see what's happening, read news, understand vulnerabilities, just read up on things. And more often than not, when you have like a vulnerability, for example, you don't just like, take the vulnerability and you apply it. You try to read the code to understand it. So it does take a lot of time. But I mean, penetration testing in general, since, it evolves with technology as well, then you're never going to be able to, fully grasp everything. Yeah. So you have to keep constantly updated. So you just spend, some time reading up on things, basically.
Yeah, I agree. And a pen testing isn't an 8 to 5 job, right? I mean, you maybe get paid 8 to 5 and then you spend hours outside of that because you want to.
Oh, definitely.
Because you're interested.
Exactly.
And I think that's the biggest difference. And like most of us spend a lot of time outside of work just watching talks, reading stuff, writing tools or something, and not because someone forced us to it, but because we want to, right?
Oh, because it's a passion.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, I was actually like, I had a penetration test where the client deployed like this super fancy, sophisticated AI antivirus on their end, and I really needed to, I had access to a victim's computer, and what I needed to do was to just get the communication back. And the thing is that since no tool actually worked, I needed to run my own custom tool. And of course, I can say like, oh, I'm writing it, during my work time. But this is so fascinating about how the antivirus works and how everything works. I actually spent so many evenings just like, analyzing it and writing code and go like, this doesn't work. It's like I had like 3 a.m. go like, oh crap, I need to go to bed.
Yeah.
So, it's a different field. You can't just like clock out at 5 and go like, what, I'm done, bye-bye. Like, you keep on going.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the biggest difference between other areas of like work and stuff. I mean, IT sec, you do stuff because you want to, and it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's just fascinating to do you, and it's. I mean, you don't get into IT security because it's a job or like this is a future. Oh, it makes money. I mean, I would say that successful individuals within this field is the people who have an actual passion for it. And it's something that, you're passionate about. Like, you want to learn, you want to see things, you want to be able to, bypass protection. You want to be able to find different vulnerabilities and, interpret them, analyze them, see how they work, and write your own things regarding it. So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of passion behind it. Otherwise, you just go, clock in, clock out, deliver some, random stuff to the client, and that's it.
Yeah. And I think because we were talking about how to get into the field earlier, and I think that's also a great way to get into the field, to just do stuff outside of your normal job, document it somehow. Like if you're hacking Hack the Box, like when you're finished, write a decent write up on like medium.com or a blog or somewhere. Just show some screenshots of your findings for every single machine that you hack. If you write your own tools, put it up on GitHub. It doesn't have to be, not because you have to write anything like super, super advanced, but like when you apply for a job, I mean, you're like, hey, here's my GitHub. Here's my 8 projects I've done. Like just that.
Oh, yeah.
Just that. Not even looked at it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also think that, it's also very fascinating because this community as well, it takes new people in with gentle care. So, nobody's going to come to you and go like, oh, you're so stupid for, doing this and doing that. Bah, I don't care about you. No, it's more in the lines of, hey, if it's a new person coming in and writing blogs or developing tools, like, how can we help them to improve? Yeah. I've seen a lot of cases where, for example, GitHub pages that were just launched because, oh, I found this very fascinating. I wrote this in my spare time. And then somebody who's like an IT expert for the last 50 years, just forks it and writes better code and goes like, here you go, man. It's like, this is going to help you out. It's like, oh, sweet.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. So just keep doing stuff outside of work if you want to get into pentesting or blue teaming or like whatever. Yeah,
and I also think it's very important to understand that, understand how it actually works. So, I've seen a lot of cases where people just like, take a vulnerability the way it is and, or like an exploit and then just launch it, thinking like that's it. But I think if you are able to understand it, like what it actually does and how does it affect the system, how does the code work, it's not only that's going to improve, your skill as a penetration tester, but it's also going to help you to, write better things. So I think it's really important to spend time to understand what exactly you are doing when it comes to exploits or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Don't clone and run. Just try to understand it.
Run. Try to understand it.
Yeah, and I usually say the same thing as well. Like if you take some random tool and it has a bunch of parameters. Let's say an Nmap, for example. Like, you should probably understand what most of the parameters do, but you don't have to memorize every single one of them. Because like when you need them, just Google it in 0.3 seconds and you have it, or the demand page. But maybe you should know the different scan types, what they are at least. And then like if you need a specific, then you're like, oh, okay, was it -SV or S? I don't remember. And then you have it in like 0.8 seconds, but then you know at least what to look for. So yeah. Don't memorize stuff is what I'm saying. Just learn where to find it and understand it.
It's also that joke is almost like, how do you evaluate the employees in IT performance? It's like how fast they type on the keyboard.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not the point here. I can just Google the commands, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to do something else that we didn't do on the previous show. That I've been looking forward to. I've stolen a segment, completely ripped it from like one of the biggest like influencers ever, called Gary Vee, and on his show he has something called Overrated, Underrated, and I've just completely stolen it, ripped it. So basically, I'm gonna throw some words at you, and you tell me if these things are overrated or underrated in your opinion. And if you want to, you can sort of expand on it and elaborate. If you don't want to, just throw out something. So let's start with something easy because I know what you're going to say. So, Twitter.
Oh, God.
Is Twitter overrated or underrated?
I think Twitter is a little bit overrated. There's so much garbage on Twitter. It's like you really have to be very focused on who you follow and what you actually look for. And there's people who actually do post relevant things on Twitter, and by all means just like follow them and retweet them, whatever. But there's also so much just like complete garbage that people just throw out.
Yes.
And I think that it's a lot of people just follow Twitter as the de facto of what's happening and without actually thinking. So somebody says something on Twitter, it's like, oh, we found this and this and this. Like, okay, let's analyze it, like what's happening here exactly. And then, like you see a day later, the actual vendor comes back, it's like, yeah, but that's not really a problem here. It's like, oh, my bad. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, people just
Do a little
have to
bit
have an
more
opinion on
research.
anything. Yeah.
And don't get me started when it comes to actual, like, other type of accounts, like, politics or something. I was like, Jesus Christ.
All right, so next topic, 0 days.
Zero days.
Or O days if you want. I'm not sure how cool people say it. I say 0 days.
0 days, exactly.
Awesome.
Oof.
Are they overrated or underrated?
Depends on what perspective you look at. See, I'm the guy who goes like depends.
Sure.
I mean, I think they're overrated to some degree, but the problem is that they're extremely useful because this is how APTs get into companies. A lot of times they use 0 days that they buy from different vendors. The problem is that a 0 day can be, the definition of 0 day can be anything between, like, I found this buffer overflow within the Windows environment, or like, sorry, within the Windows component that grants me access, and also system rights, which is like, oh my God, that's really bad. And they sell it for like $500,000 to North Korea. But you also have 0 day, for example, like, oh, I have this clickjacking on some random page. And that can also be categorized as 0 day.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to like keep like the balance between them. Because the way I see things, like, when it comes to 0 day, as in actual exploits that are useful for attackers to break into a system, I will say that those are underrated because they're extremely useful and people don't really pay attention to them. I think that companies should really constantly try to improve their security and not just like rely on, oh, this researcher found something. Okay, well, it's patch time. They should really try to always code review, always try to improve their security game. But when it comes to, like, oh, I found this cross-site scripting on this one server, or like this one web page, and it's called a 0 day, overrated.
Yeah. Yeah, my take on that is fix your 1,000 days first, then worry about 0 days. Like you have
Fair enough, right?
You have shit that's like 5 years old with not patched. Just patch that first, and then you can worry about 0 days.
Exactly.
Okay, so next topic, red teaming.
Red teaming, underrated. I think red teaming is a really good activity. I think that not a lot of people understand the benefits of it. Like, it's actually really funny. We recently, within ADDQ, we received this CEO scam. And I know it's not really like a phishing email, but just as an idea. We received this the CEO scam mail. It's like, no, oh, I'm the CEO of this company. Could you please send me like an Amazon gift card? I need it for a client. And you'd be surprised how many people, like, fall for this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that in this is something which is very basic. It's like, what CEO is going to contact you to buy them a gift card? And this is one thing. But when it comes to actually, like, phishing email, like, I send you an email and go like, hey, it's like, here's something really fun. Here's a very cool toolkit that I found on GitHub. I send you a link, right? And, like, you kind of know me. So, they go like, okay, so let's click on it. And then you get phished. Yeah. So I think it's really good that you actually, have some form of training and some form of, like a red teaming activity to show that we need to be able to improve on our employees, security practices.
Yeah.
We need to, for, the people not to click on links. We need for the reception desk to ask every single individual that comes into the building, like, do you belong here? Like, can I see a badge or something? Like, don't just like tailgate, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's very important.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of phishing emails, we're sort of getting sidetracked from the overrated, underrated, but it's worth it. I mean, phishing emails in general is I'm into it because I think it's so hard. I mean, internet is based on clicking stuff. Like that's what you do on the internet. You click on stuff, and then we tell users like, don't click on stuff. Like, but that's the point of the internet. Like, just click on links everywhere. click on links to that, click on email to this, and just stream this. So it's so hard to sort of get some kind of balance between a technical solution that saves you if you click on the wrong stuff, but then also awareness training to like, don't click on bad stuff. It's hard. Yeah.
It is. And I mean, because I mean, of course, you and me, we have experience in this field. So if we get a phishing email, we can see that, oh, it's a phishing email. But how does it go for the, a regular user? Because they don't know how to actually check the hyperlink. They don't know how to actually see that, oh, it's not Amazon, it's Ananon. .com, So it's very, very difficult to see these kind of things.
Yeah. And also, I think that like spear phishing is, of course, by nature a good way in, because you spend time really profiling someone. But I mean, you can reach the same end goal by pure luck. Because if we think that, let's say that I'm after you, right, your account, and then I either spearfish or by just pure chance, because it hits you on the right date, and you've been to DEF CON yesterday. You've been out drinking, and the next day you get an email like, hey, here's the presentations that we talked about last night. They're attached. And then you're like, well, I was at DEF CON yesterday.
Exactly.
We spoke about stuff. So, I mean, it's natural that you will get that email, right? It doesn't feel strange to you.
Exactly.
That might catch you off guard. If it's something you expect.
Exactly.
That's also why, holiday seasons you get like this, oh, you're shipping, like your parcel has been shipped, click here, or... It's the same reason, I feel.
During COVID, we also had this, like, here's your COVID test result.
Yeah.
I've seen this, actually, and I've actually gotten one of these emails to my private email address. It's like, I was actually sick with COVID in January, so now I'm better, thank you. I was sick with COVID, and I actually got, thank you, I actually got an email on my private email. It went into spam. But I always check my spam because for the lols, right?
Of course.
So you check your spam. I got an email saying like, "Oh, here's your COVID test result. Please click here." And I'm like, a lot of people, like they get concerned and they want to find out, and you go like, "Oh, like if I was a regular person and not working within security, I would get that email. I'll be like, oh, I had the COVID test 3 days back. This is my result. I need to check it."
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I mean, it's very difficult, to understand. But what I tell everyone in the case of phishing in general, first rule of thumb is check the hyperlink. It's like if you're on a computer, because on the mobile phone it's more difficult to do this. But if you're on a computer, just hover over the hyperlink. And just check what it actually says, because more often than not you're gonna have something like misspelling or an IP address or some really weird stuff happening in there. And of course, as a user, how do you define weird stuff? Well, I mean, if it's something like I don't know, medicalresults.net / something. I mean, do you know anything in Sweden called medicalresults.net? No.
Yeah.
So,
exactly. No, I agree. It's hard. And CO scams also, man. Well, that might be another show itself on just phishing email and CO scams.
Which, by the way, just a bit of a side topic here. My colleague received that email, and it was really funny because he started messaging the scammer, going like, "Oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'm going right now to the pharmacy." It's like, to the pharmacy, to ICA. It's like, "Oh, should I buy? How many do you want?" It's like, "Oh, I want 2,000 crowns." I was like, "Okay." Then he goes like, "Well, they didn't have one for 2,000 crowns, so I bought like 100 of them." And then we generated calls like, "Here, have fun."
Nice. There's some really funny YouTube videos by I don't remember his name. It's just like a stand-up comedian, and he replies to spam emails.
Yeah,
it just goes back and forth.
Yeah,
it's so
TED Talk. Yeah,
it's
really fun.
It's awesome. I should post that in the YouTube links after this, actually. Okay,
Definitely.
So I want to hear your thoughts about the overrated, underrated on Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I never invested, so I have no actual knowledge of it. I cannot really say, to be fairly honest.
Fair enough.
In between.
Yeah, in between.
That's all.
Vegas. Las Vegas.
Vegas. Oh, awesome. Underrated. It's awesome.
I have to go. I gotta go there.
Exactly. It's so much fun. So thing is that I haven't been there myself, but my sister who lives in the US, she was there, and she sent me like I was chatting with her, so we video called and everything. It's just so much fun because it's like something is happening 24/7. So it's like if you're a night owl like me, unfortunately,
Yeah.
if you're a night owl, it's really fun. Just like to go out and it's like. Just go to a casino. You don't have to like gamble or anything like that, but it's really fun. It's like you have like 100 crowns. You bet on something, have a free drink, talk to people. Walk around. Something is always happening. Some show is always happening. So yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, I gotta go. Once DEF CON is back up, I have to go.
Oh, definitely. That's our that's our motto as well. It's like Las Vegas, Las Vegas.
Guaranteed. Oh yeah, so the YouTube comedian guy, his name is James Veach. I'm not sure I did pronounce that correctly. I might have just butchered it, but James Veach, Veitch. It's awesome. He's hilarious, man.
I've seen his TED Talk. It's so funny, indeed. Yeah. It's awesome.
I love it. So if you haven't seen that, go watch it. It's awesome. So overrated, underrated on social media, just in general.
Overrated. God.
I sort of felt that coming.
So, the thing with me, exactly. Oh, you know me.
Yeah.
No, but with social media, I think that it has so much influence over people to the point where people no longer, think for themselves. So they take what social media says as the de facto truth, and it's horrible. There's so many things happening. Like somebody just says something on social media, like they post on Facebook, oh, Danut did this, and then everyone literally goes like, yes, he did that. Like, but what's happening?
Yeah, zero fact checking.
It's like, yeah, and I mean, and also, what I also really find it really really funny is people who tell me that they're privacy concerned, yet they have a Facebook account, Instagram account, Twitter account, and they go like, oh, but I don't want my privacy to be sold. Like, but what do you think these companies do?
Well,
all your data to begin with.
I feel attacked now, just so you know, because I have all of those. I take this very personally, just so you know. Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah. Just delete all your accounts.
Exactly, delete all your accounts. Yeah, but I mean, I also have, of course, I mean, we all have like like an Instagram account, like a Facebook account, something like that. But it's all its own lines of, you have to be able to follow what passions you have. Follow what passions you have. Don't listen to people what they say. A lot of people just go like sheeps to a certain way, and they don't really discern for themselves. So you just have to be arbitrary to what you like and what you don't like. And at the same time, understand that when it comes to privacy, for example, everyone sells all the information. So just accept it, basically.
Yeah.
If you want to use it.
Absolutely. So I had something. No, lost track of it. I was going to say something really smart, but then I just lost track of it.
Maybe because I interrupt you. That's why.
It's good. It's the way you should do it, man. So, is there anything else that you wanted to chat about that we haven't gone through?
So many things.
Yeah, so many things. Did we forget anything?
No, but I mean, APTs are bad.
Yeah.
At the end, as the closure lines, APTs are bad.
Yeah, APTs are bad, man. It's on another level.
But I mean, it's yeah. So just in general, I mean, penetration testing is a very interesting field. It may seem scary at the beginning. So I had a lot of people who, it's like they want to get into the field, and they were asking me, it's like, oh, but how do I get in the field? Oh, there's so much information and there's so many things to learn. There's like, it's not that difficult. I mean, the whole point is just to have some more passion for it. Just go for it. Don't think about it. Just like read a couple of things, watch some YouTube videos, understand, protocols, understand how web applications work, understand, like basic stuff. If you get the basic stuff done, then you're on the right track. So don't be afraid of it. Don't think that it's so many things to do and so much knowledge to have. It's fine. You'll be fine just as long as you continue.
Yeah.
So I mean, from my own perspective, that's the most important thing when it comes to penetration testing and getting into the field.
Yeah, and just accept the fact that you're not going to learn everything. Like you're never going to be
Exactly.
You're never going to be done.
Exactly.
With the learning of it.
There's so many areas which is like people are better than me, I'm better than them, and that's how it goes. Like that's it.
Yeah.
Like if you take the biggest name right now, it's not, but like everyone in the industry knows who Kevin Mitnick is. Knows like Kevin Mitnick. He has his own weaknesses, which people are better than him, and that's the reality. And it's fine. If he wants to improve, he can improve, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And I think that we should, because this is going up on YouTube, like on Saturday or Sunday or something, as soon as the encoding is done. Mm-hmm. So let's add some resources in the details field for like external sites, over the wire, hack the box, maybe some books and stuff. So we took it started. And then I like personally, I love just helping out anyone. So if anyone wants to just DM me, just do it, and I'll always help out. No, I do. I like that's I love that.
This is my only sign of approval that I'll give.
Yeah, perfect. That's it.
DM him. Awesome.
All right, Ricky B is with the knowledge again. He says, "Try Hack Me" is another resource. I know.
Yeah, I know it as well.
I know it was mentioned last episode. I still haven't checked it out, so I actually don't know what it is. I forgot to look it up. But yeah,
it's not a CTF basically. It's not a CTF type. So it's kind of like hack the box, but in a different line. But they all follow the same concept basically.
Awesome.
So you publish your machine, download it. Yeah.
Perfect. We'll add that as well. Yeah, so that's going to be some form of knowledge base for how to get into the business of pen testing, right?
Definitely.
It's a very well-made CTF, it says. I absolutely trust you. Right, Danut. Any other finishing? And I'm just going to say at the end of the show, but when I look at this way, it's because my chat is over here, so that's why I look to that side. Just so you know, I'm not being rude to you, Danut. It's the chat is this way.
No worries. If I look this way, it's because my notes are here, so it's fine.
Perfect. Sweet, man. Thanks for coming. Thanks for talking about pen testing. It's
Thank you for having me. Thank you indeed. Yeah, it was an interesting evening.
It's awesome. Always good talking to you. It's been a bit too long since the time before last time.
It was.
Yeah, as soon as
it's nice now. We
yeah, as soon as the comps are back up.
Over, we should.
Exactly.
We were saying the same thing. We should get together.
Yeah, absolutely. And not spread diseases, because that's bad, I've heard.
Exactly. It's frowned upon.
Right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Javolo. Thanks, Ricky B. It's good having you in chat. It's nice to have an active chat. It makes for a much more interesting conversation, because we don't know what's coming up. So we have someone in chat called Inside Security Fan 410, sorry. All right.
Nice. Hello.
I gotta say, he just took the MVP spot. Sorry, Ricky. I'm biased.
See how? It's because of the name, isn't it?
Yeah. It's only because of the name.
Of course.
Yeah.
You always go for the name, man.
Of course, man. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and thanks Danut, and we'll have you back on here again sometime.
Yeah, indeed. We'll be happy to be back.
Awesome. Okay, see you guys.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
See you. Bye.